Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Today is all about Critical Think's GoFundMe, and we're doing everything we can to bring attention to his position. Thanks for dropping in, and thanks for joining me from the huge ass stream that was just had with CT Live. So, our topic today is one that's kind of near and dear in certain ways. It's talking about mass and how we end up with mass. Why do we have it? Well, the answer is going to become more obvious as we proceed with this. It is a weighty topic, and I know some of you are going to go nuts down in the comments, so please.
Take a deep breath of that go.
How's that? Have I got sound now? So busy preparing, I forgot to set this up properly. Have I got sound? Take a few seconds to come through. Mute it there. No wonder the chat was going crazy. I could just see all this thing rising up the screen there. How about we go back and can't actually say back now. In any case, I explained the whole pile of things around mass. How we got there was about a complaint from back earlier on. Start over, please. Okay. Just have to make sure this doesn't jump into full screen because it's quite annoying. So start the slideshow. That didn't start over. Oh, this is fun. This is so much fun. Yeah, that was going to go full screen if I did that. Okay, so let's start with maths as a weighty topic. Basically, sorry about that, Max. Thanks for telling me. Didn't realise my sound. Is my sound clipping? It's probably a bit loud now. It's a bit strange. I didn't have it that loud when I checked this earlier. Any case, let's move along. I know you guys are all going to say when I start talking about maths and it's a weighty topic, you're going to end up with this. You're going to say, no, we're going to go nuts all the way through this. Do I have sound? Someone's just made a comment about problems with technology all the way through. Blame DP. Yep. Great, thank you. I thought it was a bit too loud, so yeah, just let me know if there's anything else wrong as we go along, and we'll work from there. I do enjoy doing this kind of stuff because it's kind of fun to do. It's fun to interact with people on camera and talk to all of you. So how did all this begin? Let's just go through this. The earliest known complaint was from 1750 BCE, where the person was writing a letter to someone to say, hey, this copy you provided me wasn't the quality I expected. Three things come out of that. So one of them is the metallurgical side, the purity of the material. The secondary one, if the purity isn't there, then you're not getting the copper that you paid for. So this is all about value for money. I want to know that the dollar I spent or the shekel I spent or whatever value money I used actually worked properly. That's the key. This is where mass came from. It came from the need to barter and trade. So it's mostly around trade and commerce. This complaint is the earliest one we've recorded, but there've got to be other complaints somewhere. That one's written in cuneiform, so this one goes back to, cuneiform is Babylonian, if I remember rightly. That went the wrong way. I've got to see what I do. Should have come up on this one. That's... My mouse seems to be a little bouncy. I think I've got a mouse problem. Any case, there were masses I showed before. Those masses actually covered 5,000 kilometre area. They were made from stone, they're made from brass, but what they discovered, there's only about a 2 gram difference between each of these things. So what we have done is we've gone from trading with barley grains, for example, as a standard, through to a rather expensive paperweight, to a completely new method, and I'll go into a little bit more detail around all of this. If we look at all the different units of mass, and I've got some really unusual ones here, you can see we started with grains. So we were talking about grains of cereal, wheat, barley, whatever it was. That's kind of where we started. Then we ended up with shekels. Romans introduced drachmas. You can see I've got the years marked across the bottom of the graph. Just to make it a bit easier, you can see the years. And you're going back 3,000 years. Here we are busy trying to trade. We worked our way through where the Romans came in, the shekels came in. Work our way up here. There's a bushel. Now the bushel's a funny one, because a bushel is not actually a mass. It's a volume. And it's an unusual one, because most people think it is a mass. We keep going up. Here's a most unusual one. Who invented the slug? We'll have to blame the British for that one. Moving along, the French came along. They decided they wanted to do the gram. They've gone from gram to kilograms. We've got a kilogram, which was basically based on water. Then it became based on platinum iridium block, which is also not completely stable. And we finally finish up with the Planck constant very, very recently. You can see just the last 100 or so years, there's this little block here where metric started coming in. How do you measure all this? With the right tools. You've got to use the right tools for this stuff. Right? We can see right back from history, which has been recorded by the Egyptians, they used various forms of balances to measure it. All of this is in the name of getting it right. Seeing a few comments down here. Who's this? Okay, yeah, some people do like a bit of an engineering talk, because it actually is good to look at the history of why things are the way they are now. Okay, this presentation's a little bit messed up because it was actually hard, and I'm actually quite busy back here, so I don't get to read the comments. But yeah, it all started with questionable. People played around with masses. Even the current IPK mass actually gains and loses weight. Every time we touch it, we leave fingerprints on it. Thank you, Calder. And yeah, basically we had to find a better way. So we eventually got to the point where we went down a new path. So let's keep going, because there's a few more things about measurement. This top one here is the type that Romans used. So they would put a mass on it and they would try to weigh it up. We've got older masses here, older skulls from Mesopotamia and Assyrian, where they use iron weights. So you can see this stuff is just evolving slowly. slowly, and humanity always tried to standardize. So when you bought something from one person, you were getting the right weight for the right money. Commerce all the way through. Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell everyone, cup of cope, can't do without that. Okay, and this is where we started with the kilogram. The basis really started out as water, but what they discovered, it was really hard to put water and measure it up properly. So the volume idea was great. There were a couple of things about water. One, it had to be fairly pure. Two, it had to be at about 4 degrees Celsius. Otherwise, the density wasn't best. So water's a funny substance. As you cool it down, it shrinks and shrinks and shrinks. At 4 degrees Celsius, it's actually at its densest. And then it starts to expand as it freezes. Everyone knows ice freezes and it expands during that freezing phase. And that's one of the things I had to be careful of. If there were impurities, the mass would be different as well. So this was hard to maintain as a standard. So we went off this and we went on to other things. We end up with the platinum iridium standard. Pardon me, I'm just trying to concentrate on my list of things I'm doing throughout here. So a couple of things to consider. If we don't have standardization, we can't work properly. Because there's only one platinum iridium standard in the entire planet, under those covers, we have to compare to that on a regular basis. So we take this out of its nice little tray there, and put it onto a balance, and we check everybody's 1 kilogram against this. This is really hard to do because this is not reproducible. If something happens to that mass on its own, you will have no end of trouble saying, I bought a kilogram of something down the road. That's why we actually had to find a better way. This poor thing, being made of metal, it's physical. It's only about 40 millimeters in diameter and height. It's made from very expensive materials. Platinum and iridium are very expensive metals. But that's what they use because they thought that would be fairly stable. Well, actually it's not. It absorbs gas. It gets dust on it. Every time you wipe it, you take molecules off it. A result of that is you now have to deal with the mass it's changing over time as well. Hello, subscribe now. Thanks you. Thank you very much. This is really busy for me. This is probably the busiest I've ever been on a live stream. So we have to question things. We used to make maths this way. You're not sure your bathroom scales, the digital scales, they're really interesting. We went from using springs and gravity to operate them to devices which only measure the force. So the electronic strain gauges are a completely new way of doing business. And these, it's a bathroom scale. It's exactly what was being used by Critical Think when he went to Antarctica. Then we get this thing. This contraption looks horrible, but what it actually is a reproducible way to do a kilogram. This is called a kibble balance. Its purpose in life is to use electricity and the Planck constant to give you a kilogram. Because of its design, if I get the right materials and I build one myself, I can reproduce the kilogram at home. It's going to be pretty expensive, but you get the idea. That's the whole idea of this. You want to be able to reproduce things. So we're going to work our way through this one. By the way, Professor Bell, any comments, please let me know. Okay, so in a moment, we're going to start Critical Things. Do I have any questions in the chat before I move on? See, Max, I just noticed you're saying you're heading off. By the way, I did put a series of questions in my posts. Be interesting to see what the answers look like, and after we've let Critical Think talk to us, we'll be able to go from there. I'm about 4 minutes ahead of schedule. Are there any questions people want to ask? Now's a good time while my attention can focus on that. Now, there's a little bit of background music. Just let me know if that's too loud. Yeah, DP Debunks is taking notes. Absolutely. Something I didn't mention about the scales, the ones that use balance scales, where you put a mass on one side and produce on the other side, they nullify gravity out. So if the gravity changes, if you're different latitudes, you always got the same mass of that material regardless of where you were. So there's a big difference of strain gauges being electronic. They don't have that balance mechanism. They're just relying on something basically bending. I'm looking around my floor here, and the closest thing I got is this. This ruler does bend very slightly. That's what strain gauges do. They measure the strain being caused by something bending. Okay, I'm about to move on to actually a pre-recorded chat with CT. We had around 30 odd minutes, a really good chat with him, but I'll let him tell you everything you need to know. Everyone, please meet Critical Think, the legend who went all the way to Antarctica to prove mass does change. Welcome.
Hey, g'day everybody. Hey, it's the legendary Critical Think here, and I'm not upside down today because I'm actually in the Northern Hemisphere, okay?
Okay, let's start with some questions for you, Crit.
Yeah.
A lot of people think a digital scale just shows your mass, but it's actually something else, right? Can you give us a walkthrough of what's really happening under the surface?
Yeah, look, a digital scale is a very clever device, very cleverly designed, and it measures force. It doesn't actually measure mass, but it derives mass through the measurement of force. And what force is this, you might ask? Hello, maybe it's gravity. And but mass is just not have only one force acting on it. It has the centrifugal force, a very small component caused by the spin of the Earth. So the scale is measuring the net force because you can't separate forces. So a scale measures force and then multiplies that by a magic number, come up with the answer of mass and displays the answer of mass. So it is an indirect measurement, of course, but it's a great device.
Let's say someone is standing still on a scale and then they jump or squat fast. The number changes when they do that, even though their body didn't gain weight. Why does that happen?
Well, because the scale is measuring force, when you jump up and down or squat or whatever, you change the force acting on the scale. So the numbers will move around. So this is some good examples of that. Is that the scale itself, you have to be careful that there's not other forces acting on the scale. I'm not talking about magnetism, okay? I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about vibrations. For example, the floor vibrate when you walk on it. These scales are so sensitive, they will move. I don't know if maybe people didn't notice this, but in Antarctica when we were out at the camp, the floor was a bit bouncy. And while I'm trying to measure the scale, people walking around on the floor, I couldn't get the reading going up and down, up and down, up and down. Very difficult to get a constant reading in the hut. And I've also measured in Suvarnabhumi Airport, and several times I've done a measurement there. And I got to choose a couple of times. I chose a spot right up on the top floor on the departure hall, and the floor moves. People walking on the floor all the time, boom, 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 and the floor vibrates and causes the scale to go up and down. And even a breeze, a slight breeze, can cause force on the scale to alter the reading. So they're very sensitive scales, and you got to be careful. So they do measure force, and you can observe that just by looking how it works. And so that's it. They only measure mass because of the internals of the scale.
Okay. So in a way, would you agree that a digital scale is more like a tuned force sensor, and we interpret that as mass using gravity as the constant?
So yeah, that's tuned is a good word to use there. And we use the acceleration due to gravity as the constant. So force equals mass times acceleration. So that means if you want to know the mass, you've got to know the force and you've got to know the acceleration. Turn that around. So the force is what the scale measures. But how do we know? How does the scale know? What is the acceleration due to gravity? That's an interesting question because it varies over the Earth. As we know, as a result of my experiment, the force acting on a mass varies around the Earth. So you've got to have a way to calibrate your scale. Now, most people don't understand calibration. But the scale, it's very clever. This is very clever. So if you got force equals mass times acceleration, if you want to find acceleration, you need to know force and you need to know mass. So you got a calibration weight, which is a known mass. So you got your M, mass. Force is what the scale measures. So you got that? Now, we've got those two. We can work out what the constant is, the acceleration due to gravity and centrifugal force. So the scale goes through a calibration process. You tell it now, I go to calibrate, I go to put a known mass on the scale, you work it out. So the scale works it out. It says, what is the multiplier that I should use to convert force into mass? So once you've worked that out, you're good to go at that location to convert force into mass. And it does all that digitally and electronically.
Okay. Given your engineering background, even if this isn't your specialty, how common is this kind of indirect measurement approach in other parts of engineering?
Measurements are indirect measurements, like, for example, you go measuring distance. Now, there are direct ways of measuring it. You've got a tape measure, and there are indirect ways of measuring distance. Now they have these laser gadgets that fire a laser beam, and the time it comes back, that's a measurement of distance. And the bigger scale that is, how do you measure the distance to the moon? There's certainly not a tape measure long enough for that one. And so they have bounced radio signals off the moon. And when the Apollo 11 mission went up there and put the reflectors on the moon, that was very handy to measure the distance to the moon. That gave their best measurement, the distance to the moon. And that's an indirect measurement because you're measuring time. You're not measuring distance. You're measuring the speed. You know the speed of light. You know the time it takes. Then you know the distance. So that's an indirect measurement as well. And indirect measurements are a godsend, if you like. That's the way you have to do things when direct measurement is not available.
Good, thank you for that. Have you ever worked on systems where knowing something indirectly, like strain, vibrational load, was key to understanding the big picture?
So I'm not normally a mechanical engineer. I'm an electrical engineer, specialise in computing and that. But engineering works many ways. You're not fixed in what you need to do. An engineer is an inventor. An engineer is a creative thinker. An engineer has studied for many years 4 years at university to get my degree, and it's not easy, and a lot of people drop out. So we do learn how to apply. We got to know. So let's if you use the example of the scale. Now, before I was just using this scale to measure my weight, my mass, go around various locations, measure mass. I just use the scale as an instrument. I look up the specs, look up the error tolerance. I say, can I use this scale for this job? I want to measure a difference of 0.1 grams. And will this scale do the job? So I look up the stats for the scale and say, oh, its accuracy, it's accurate within 0.03 or thereabouts, and it works in its temperature range. Yeah, I should be able to use this scale. Now, at that time, I didn't know much about how the scale worked. I mean, I knew it had like a strain gauge mechanism. But then flat earthers started to make like, do you know what a load cell is? So they'd read something online about a load cell to scale, and then they read something like, oh, temperature can affect load cells, therefore temperature is going to make a difference in your scale. But they don't understand that the scale was designed by a dude or dudes that knew what they were on about. They were clever people. And they say, we've got this thing called a load cell. We can, it's got a fairly linear relationship to force. We can use that we could use this to measure mass by measuring weight. And they go, oh, wait a minute. The load cell varies with temperature. What are we going to do about that? We want our scale to work from, say, -10 to +50. But we don't want temperature to affect the reading. So I know. Oh, we'll design a compensation circuit. And so they put this compensation circuit in the scale and then compensates for the temperature. So then they can publish their stats for the scale. They say it works to plus or minus whatever in this temperature range, -10 to +50, whatever. So I trusted that in the beginning, and now I learn a little bit more about it, how it works, to counter the arguments about, temperature's going to affect your reading. That's why it weighs X there. But anyway, we know that temperature doesn't, and not only that, nobody can ever explain how some random variation in temperature can come up with a reading on the scale that is exactly according to the prediction, according to the WGS 84 model. I mean, how can that happen? Impossible. But anyway, as we know, the people don't understand measurement in general. They don't understand how indirect measurements work, how something that can cause an effect, and you can measure the effect, and then if you can got the causal relationship that way, you can work out. That's how the scale works. The effect is your mass has weight. Scale measures the force, which is weight, converts that to mass. And so in general, people don't understand certain things about measurements. You got to know your measuring instrument. You've got to know its tolerance. You've got to understand, can I use this instrument to do this job? And engineers are trained for all of this. So this is how their minds work. This is how they're taught to work. Everything has an error. You've got to account for that. For example, I'll give you the example about the dumpy level. Now, the dumpy level is an instrument that's only used over short distances. Now, the thing is, you can apply the dumpy level using the knowledge of how the dumpy level works, why it works, knowing its error. You can apply the dumpy level to work over long distances to measure horizon drop, for example. Now, the flat earthers get all upset about this because they say, oh, dumpy level only meant to be used over short distance. You can't use it over a long distance. I say, yeah, but why? Why can't you use it over long distance? Oh, because it's only meant to be used over a short distance. Oh, okay. Why is it meant to be used over a short distance? Oh, they don't know. They don't know. But the thing is, the dumpy level can only use over a short distance because of the curvature of the Earth, you numbnut. Once you start getting into more longer distance, it'll be inaccurate because of the curvature of the Earth, because the Earth drops away. As you know, you can no longer measure level with it. So when you understand how the level works and its accuracy, right, you can calibrate these things. And people don't understand the calibration process with those either. They say you have to send it away to the factory to get it calibrated. But no, you just read the instructions about the calibration, work out how the calibration works. You can do it yourself. I calibrate my dumpy level, and I'm very, very meticulous with it because I want to get the accuracy down 1 millimeter in 60 meters. And then you work that out. That's, I don't know, it's about a meter or something. I don't remember the numbers. Over 12 kilometers, you're going to be plus or minus a meter or something like this. And then if you're trying to measure a horizon drop of 12 meters, then what's wrong with using a dumpy level over a long distance? Over a long distance, its error is plus or minus 1 or 2 meters. I mean, if your drop is 12 meters, you know you're way above that error, so you can use it. This is understanding your instruments, how they work, understanding the errors. You can apply the engineering principles and make a measurement, but they don't understand. And that brings me to the other thing about we're talking about horizon drop measurement. Who cat word wants to measure the horizon drop with a drone? You fly your drone level, this one, and if the water gets further away than the Earth's curve. But he has no way of guaranteeing that the drone is level. He says his idea of level is pointing a camera at the horizon. Haven't you just defeated the whole purpose of the experiment? It's a very poorly designed experiment, and he's using the wrong piece of equipment. Because you're flying this drone. What he'll do if he ever gets to do the experiment, is he'll fly his drone at a constant height over the water. Say, look, it didn't get any higher. Oh, wait a minute. No, well, isn't that because you're flying it at the same height over the water? But no. I've pointed the camera at the horizon. It's okay. It's okay. No, it's not okay. So I've actually, I've actually done the drone experiment, but without a drone. I'll tell you how you do it without a drone. You get a dumpy level or a theodolite. People at least think theodolite is more accurate than a dumpy level, so you can use a theodolite. You point, that's your level line. Then you fly an imaginary drone across the level line. They say, does the drone get higher off the water? Well, actually, yes, it does. Many people have done this experiment, this without the drone. But anyway, I ramble on. It's fun talking about measurements. Fun talking about measurements and how you do measurements and a properly designed experiment. There we go. Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to the next question. From your perspective, do people underestimate how much trust we put into these kinds of measurements every day?
Well, I think people overestimate, actually. I think people have implicit trust in pieces of equipment and whatever when that trust is not warranted. You have to understand the instrument that you're working with or the tools you're working with. You've got to understand their limitations. If you just trust the tool, trust the measurement, you open yourself to making errors. So, yeah, I'll give the example of some cars that have the automated collision avoidance. Oh, give me a headache. As I've driven a car with this collision avoidance, and you get a little bit too close to something. Bop, 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 bop. What's this? And they start braking and everything. And would you trust a system like that? I don't know. I tried it once with one of the lane keeping things. I said, sorry, I'll just let this thing try lane keep. But no. So yeah, it's a matter of don't always trust 100%. Now, sometimes people get the idea that measurements and experiments must be 100% accurate or they're no good. If even 100.1%. No. There's always an error. You got to know your error. You say, well, if the measurement is between 99 and 101, and we predicted 100, that's really good. Because our error in doing this measurement could mean it was 99. It could mean it's 101. And to demand 100% accuracy is ridiculous. But a lot of flat earthers try this trick. Oh, no, it wasn't 100, it was 99.9. Experiments failed.
I think we'll move on to the next question for you now. You went all the way to Antarctica last year in December and partaking in the final experiment. What was the overall experience like, not just as a debunker, but as a person? What impact did it have on you to be there?
Right, so as soon as I heard about this, I was just automatically thinking, I got to go. Like, this is pretty exciting for me. I'm a bit of an adventurer, a bit of a risk taker. Gets me into trouble sometimes. But this, I said, I had to go. I wanted to do my experiment in Antarctica as well. Not only just go to Antarctica, which is such an exciting place. It's like the last frontier, the final frontier of exploration on Earth, except maybe going up to the top of Mount Everest. But I'll never go to Mount Everest. But I've been to Antarctica. And I thought, it sounded so exciting to me. And then I thought about, look, I'll get to fly Sydney to Santiago. I always wanted to fly this flight, Sydney to Santiago, one of the great flat Earth debunking flights, and go and do my measurement in Antarctica. Now, as far as I know, the only weight measurement like this done in Antarctica before was the GNOME experiment, which was a marketing exercise by the people who built the scales. But experiment, it wasn't controlled, right? They didn't control how the experiment was performed. So it was a mess. I've analysed the results from that experiment. It's a mess. You can't rely, the results mean nothing. But people who were marketing the scales, they got their point across. Really, the scales don't work the same at every location on Earth. And of course, we know that that's because gravity is not the same, centrifugal force is not the same. But it was not a very refined or controlled experiment. But I have all the results from controlled experiment, predictions, calculations, error analysis. I got all the results, but I did not have that data point. I wanted to get that data point. And that would put me, I reckon, the first person who has performed this experiment properly in Antarctica. So in terms of gathering evidence from my weight change experiment, it was very exciting. I mean, before I went there, I did not know what the scale was going to read, but I'm going to make a prediction. I'm going to make a prediction and I'm going to say, you should read this. And it's a bit of a nail-biting thing, you know. Oh, what if I'm wrong? You know, yeah, you got to think about that. What if I'm wrong? But let's go ahead. We've got faith in the science, we've got faith in the technique. Let's go and do it. So I was thinking, how am I going to get the money? Well, I've got to commit some money to this. So I forked out my own money for that and got some money raised with GoFundMe, but we'll talk about that. And yes, it was as soon as, like I said, as soon as Will Duffy said, anyone who's interested, email me, I sent the email pretty much the same day. I go, yes, I'm interested. Now I've got to work out how I'm going to go.
Okay, so I think we can move on now. So with respect to going to Antarctica, did it change the way you think about what we do online, this battle of ideas and effort to correct misinformation?
Oh, so it surprised me the length that people went to actually deny all sorts of things about that trip. It was like a huge surprise to me. So people saying like we didn't go there. There was a studio, it was all made up, and all of these things, and it wasn't real snow because there was no footprints, and all of these kinds of things that they weren't there. They weren't there. There was 9 people, 9 pairs of eyes, 9 people looking at the sun, and about a dozen cameras taking pictures. And they go, oh, no, it didn't happen. Because it interferes with their belief system. Now, I suppose a little surprised about how strong these belief systems can affect someone. I'm guessing, you know, so the hardcore people are never going to be convinced. But that's the way it's going to be with this world. That's the way this world is. You have people with these ideas and people with these ideas, and they go, sometimes they'll kill each other over it. But we won't be doing that with the final experiment. But this is what happens in the world. People get so caught up in their beliefs. And but I do what I do because, well, when I started debunking the flat earthers were running rampant with this stupid stuff they'd publish. Really stupid stuff. You go, this is not right. Why would anybody ever believe this? If we say nothing, people will think this is correct. So you're going to go in and, no, this is wrong because this. You do the experiments, do the science, do the explanations, and hopefully you'll get people to listen to you that are not hardcore, right? It's the people who have still got a little opening in their mind for common sense and truth instead of truth. So people who look at both sides of the argument, you cannot have just flat earthers talking and they often say, well, if a flat Earth bothers you so much, why do you bother to debunk us? Why didn't you? Well, the answer is because you cannot have flat earthers talking in a vacuum with no opposition. And you've got to leave the way open for people to see how they're wrong, how these people are wrong, how it's misinformation. And the weight experiment is my speciality. Which, if you understand this weight experiment, it is like a ripper experiment. Yeah, I mean, who would have thought you can predict what something should weigh? You go to Antarctica and it weighed almost exactly the same, within the margin of error, of course. The flat earthers saying, "Oh no, it read 0.82 instead of 0.80. Fail." So, yeah. And again, congratulations to Will Duffy with the final experiment. He's changed a lot of things. Yeah, good on him. Well done. And I was very pleased to be a part of that.
Actually, from my perspective, when I got to see all the videos, I just kept watching them. And I felt excited for everybody that went. It's just an amazing opportunity that was given there. So my last question before we close out today, Crit, is you did pay for that, and you said that a bit earlier, you paid for the trip out of your own pocket. If you had a chance, would you do that all over again?
I'll say, absolutely, yes. Only this time, I'll remember to get the T-shirt. I forgot the T-shirt last time. So I have to go back again to get the T-shirt. But I'm actually seriously thinking about doing it again. Now I've got to wait until I get a few more dollars under my hat. You can see there's none there right now. So yeah, I bought the ticket. I bought the plane ticket early, and a lot of expensive things early, and then I had the GoFundMe going, and it I think I wanted to get up to about 30% or something. So that helped a lot. People who donated, thank you very much. You don't know how much that helped, because soon after this year, I sort of like had nothing left. So that was very, very happy to have that money from the GoFundMe. It did keep me going for a while, and I got cleaned out by my relatives, but that's another story. But I was very, very happy that I was able to use that money first before they got it. I used it first. Now I'm building up. I says I'm building up, and I will seriously think about going back again.
Fantastic. Crit, thank you very much for your time. It's been a really interesting conversation to have with you today. And just before we close out, Critical Think went to the literal edge of the earth. He didn't do it to prove a point, but he actually demonstrated the truth. If you want to support his effort, this GoFundMe link is in the description below.
Yes, that'd be great. Fantastic. Thank you. This would be great. I have to thank, at the bottom of my heart, everybody who contribute and everybody who will contribute. Thank you.
Hey guys, I'm back. That was a really good chat with Crit at the time, and I really enjoyed talking to him. You probably gather I got a bit excited about the fact that we talked about Antarctica. That whole TFE was for me a very exciting thing, and to fork out money from your own pocket is really hard. Please help him out where you can. The GoFundMe is very important because he'd like to get some of that money back, or perhaps all of it. Now, we've got about 12 minutes at the end of this. I'm handing off to Unfornica at the end. Just before we go there, let's go back and start looking at where the series of questions, because they need to be answered. Starting with the slug. Most of us probably aren't aware. It's an old Imperial engineering one, We're going to blame the Brits for that one. Right? Water. Yeah, it started out as a cubic decimeter of water. Right? As I said, the volume wasn't the best thing to use. Right? Which one's not a weight mass? It was the bushel. I think that's about the end of that. Yes, that's the end of that one there. Let's check the fundraiser. See how far that's gone today. And we've gone from about 24,000, we've ended up around 28,400. So this has moved by just under $500 since we last worked with this. Okay, now let me see. I think there's one more little thing. I just want to have a quick look back through the chat because there's a lot of chats going on here. Someone asked me for a bowl of cope. Sorry, I had to give you an empty one, but you still paid full price for it. Okay, what else we got? So, the usual comments come up about our good friend Whitson. Yes, he's getting mocked pretty hard at the moment inside the community out there. This is really important. Everyone that went down the TFE saw with their own eyes, as Crit said, and some of them came back and didn't change their mind. We know that's going to happen. Keeping with my maths topic though, when Coates dismisses a class, we're going to Unfornicated. In case you guys don't know Unfornicated, he's a really nice guy, ex-US Navy, and fun to watch. Heaps of fun to watch. Sometimes the chats do make me laugh. Let's go back to my hosts. So here we are. We're actually working our way through this. I'm actually really early, so if there are any questions from anyone, please put them up now. Any questions at all? I hate finishing early. Okay, oh, I forgot to mention, I do actually have extra cope. So Dan's probably not ready to start, so let's just have a bit of a chat. So I didn't really explain my background when I began here. I have a fairly long history with weights and measures. I go back to a period where we did our own calibration work. I've calibrated optical devices, I've calibrated physical devices, I've done pressure, mass. Okay, thanks Unfornicated. Optical is very interesting because the primary thing we did was we just checked that the rings would measure the correct values on the way around and also over the top. But one of the things we had to check was something called run out, and all you did is you took your theodolite, you plunged the telescope 180 degrees and rotated the base, and you kept doing that over and over to see how far out it would run. It was really interesting going through that. The telescope itself, you could calibrate or test the focus of the device. We had this tube, it's about that round, about a metre long. We'd mount that 5 metres away from us and we could actually focus through the optics with this special tube that was designed to give you a series of targets. That was interesting to do that as well. So the concept where dumpy level was measured by Crit, the fact is that dumpy level still has a line of sight. It doesn't care about the fact the Earth is curving underneath it at all. Right? And those optical tubes I talked about, the ones that were designed to go from fairly close, around 5 metres away, all the way through, when they said it was infinity, it's not really infinity, I think we know that, but the fact is that you could keep going in a relatively straight line down inside a tube designed to do that. I'm thinking we've got a different headset on our microphones there. Anyone having trouble with the sound? No. Okay. I think it's nearly time to wrap up. I'm just going to go on to my outro, which will play a tune, and then I'll hand all this over to Unfornicated. Bye for now, guys. Glad to hear that some of you learned a few things. Take care, everybody, and have a good day.
In the chat like he's running the game. Ask a fake question, then deflect the blame. Truth hits hard, but he don't wanna burn. Dick Wayne is a disingenuous, dishonest, chicken shit douchebag loser with no balls. Back it's like dodgeballs. You drop a source, he calls it fake news. Can't tell science from his own damn shoes. You bring receipts, he goes to thread. Leaves more trails than a flat earther sled. Dick Wayne is a disingenuous, dishonest, chicken shit douchebag loser with no balls. Swears he's woke but he always falls. Dick Wayne, king of self-made pitfalls. He's allergic to facts, breaks out in a rash. Truth hits his ego like a YouTube crash. Talks big against NASA, gravity spin, but melts like wax when the facts sink in. Every tantrum fuels his premium plan. Top tier member of the Copium Emporium clan. Dick Wayne is a disingenuous, dishonest, chicken shit douchebag loser with no balls. Ain't got proof, just denial stalls. Welcome to the chat where his brain wall crawls. Dick Wayne is a disingenuous, dishonest, chicken shit douchebag loser with no balls.